The Magic Dads podcast is now available wherever you listen to podcasts or on YouTube at the Old Cranky Man Collectibles YouTube channel. Magic Dads is brought to you by Old Cranky Man Collectibles and all of our generous patrons over at patreon.com/MtG Dads Podcast. Go check it out for exclusive content and so much more.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Magic Dads podcast. I am your host, Stefan Mahoney, and of course, with me is my beloved friend, Blake Chaffa.
Oh, so I'm gonna cry. I got tears.
We've been friends for a very long time. I think you've earned it.
Tears.
So, kind of excited about today's podcast.
I am too. We've been planning this one for a while. It's a hot topic.
it's a necessary topic, also.
Yeah, I
think
it's
important.
So. Oh, I think so. So, should I start with the story?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so here's a story, and a lot of the details don't matter. So, what I will say is that this happened at the Pro Tour. This is an actual thing that happened. So, two players are playing at the Pro Tour, and player A goes, okay, I would like to go to combat. And player B goes, okay, let's go to combat. Player A then attacks with his creatures, and player B goes to blocks, and he assigns blocks. After blocks are declared, player A goes, wait a second. I want to go back to my main phase. Player B goes, okay, no problem. So they back it up. Creatures are untapped. And then player A casts a sorcery speed removal spell and goes back to combat and attacks.
Okay. I don't like any of that.
Yeah, you have a lot going on in your head. So walk me through your thoughts. Tell me what you're thinking.
Sure. I would call a judge in that moment if my opponent tried to. So talking about the instance specifically, if my opponent asked, and this is sort of germane to the form, like the whole place where you are, right? The level of competition.
We're talking about the Pro Tour.
We're talking about the Pro Tour. If a player tried to do that against me on the Pro Tour, and they asked me if they could return to their main phase after going through all that, the answer definitively would be no from me.
Okay.
And if they tried to do it, I would call a judge.
Okay.
We've already given away a lot of information about your attacks, what you have in hand. You have not utilized any instant speed spells to stop my blocks. And I've made my blocks based on the information that you have given me, and I have given you that information.
Sure. Yeah.
We are not backing it up.
There's information to be given and taken in going to combat and declaring blocks. So
correct.
In this situation, your opponent asks, and your immediate reaction is to say, "Judge, this is what's happening."
Is to say no.
Okay.
Respectfully.
So, do you or do you not call a judge?
I think it depends if my opponent is insistent. Generally speaking, I would probably call the judge in that moment just to make sure that they were aware of the situation.
Okay.
And I would just go, hey, judge, my opponent is asking if they could back this up.
Yep.
To prior to combat. And the judge would, I believe, would just say, no, we're not able to back it up. If you've made decisions in the game, we're going to continue playing the game as is.
Sure. And I do agree that is probably the call that the judge would make. And I don't disagree with it at all. However, in this specific situation, the player B, did not call a judge and allowed their opponent to do that and had no problems in doing so. What a kind soul. I also do not call a judge, and I also allow it to happen.
You're totally okay with them doing that.
am totally okay with that happening. Yes.
Yeah.
I want my opponent to be in control of their life, and no, I don't care if we're playing on the Pro Tour. No, I don't. The rules enforcement level has nothing to do with it. I wasn't there. I didn't see it firsthand, but to my knowledge, the request was, can we go back to my main phase? And his opponent allowed that. So no, I don't have a problem with that at all.
Okay. I suppose it depends on what you're looking for.
I don't care. I mean, this is a big reason why I probably, like I'm never going to be on the pro tour because I just don't care if
You
I
just
win
go,
that
no.
much. But really, what it comes down to is like I want my opponent to be in control of their life.
You want them to play as optimally as possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't think, but that includes for me, and this is just for me, is if they make a mistake in that level, their optimal performance is based on that mistake. Like I never take away my opponent's in it, my opponent's ability to misplay, and in this case, whether or not that's a misplay is sort of uh, debatable, right? But
Again, I wasn't there. I didn't see this
yeah,
happen, but it is my understanding that there was no malicious intent there.
no,
There is a
I can't
lot
believe that
of
there
this.
is.
This was on the stage. They were
Mhm,
not on camera. It wasn't a feature match. I don't think you can go
mhm.
find this video on the internet and watch it. But there is a lot of pressure while you're up there, and it's my understanding
Oh
that
yeah,
he had either thought that the card was an instant, and when he went to cast it
mm,
during combat, he was like, that's a sorcery. I should have done this before. Or
mm,
he just intended to do it and forgot because of the exterior, stimuli
yeah.
that was coming at him. So, nope, not calling a judge there. Absolutely allowing that to happen and
I don't hate that,
completely happy with it.
but
So,
I don't think I would do that.
that being said,
Hmm.
there are a lot of times where calling a judge is most certainly, the correct
Yeah,
thing to do. I
yeah. A
think
lot
that
of times,
this specific debate that we were talking about is kind of more about morality and less about actual, game mechanics or cheating, as it were.
sure.
But let's talk about some of the times where, if your opponent does this, you should call a judge.
Oh yeah, and there's quite a few situations where it not only is something you should do, you could do, it's something you should do.
Yes.
Like absolutely should do it.
Yep.
So what are those?
One of my biggest pet peeves when when I'm playing a game of Magic is when it's my opponent's turn, I'm just watching the clock tick.
Oh, right. This one. Uh
So I have a propensity to just say how much time is left in the round. If I think
mhm,
my opponent is taking too long, I'll say 15 minutes left,
yeah,
under 15 minutes, under 10 minutes,
sure.
things like that. So if your opponent is taking too long or slow playing, absolutely okay to call a judge.
Yeah. And oftentimes the judge will just you don't even have to tell your opponent why you're calling the judge. You just go, "Hey judge," and if you are worried about them being hurt about it, you can go, "Hey, I need to ask you something away from the table." And the judge
Mm,
will allow you to stand up
hmm
and leave the table,
hmm
and you can just say, "Hey, I think my opponent's stalling or my opponent's slow playing, and I'd like you to keep an eye on him." And that
hmm
judge, if they're a good judge, and most are, I all the ones in our area are, they will go, "Okay, I'll keep an eye on it," and they will watch the game.
hmm
Oftentimes, either standing at the table or sort of like just viewing from afar.
So the big one is if you have any if you have any inclination that your opponent is cheating or altering the game state in some way that would be beneficial to them.
Yeah, two explorers,
Two,
two ex-
two explorers.
two explorers. Uh, Alex Bertoncini, sort of a savage cheater in Magic, going back a ways. If you ever have a situation where your opponent has done something malicious to gain advantage, stacking their deck in some way, or you know, intentionally hiding a card in their lap,
Drawing
or
extra cards.
trying to look at your hand, like trying to glean in additional information from you,
Hmm.
even that, call a judge
Yeah.
right away
Yep.
and let them know. And again, you don't have to tell the judge what is happening at the table.
You can,
Also,
yes, if you can always discreetly ask to step away. You don't have to worry
mhm,
about time. They will always give you a time extension while you go and explain the situation. And,
yeah,
you don't ever have to worry about, retaliation from the other player for calling the judge on something like that. Magic is a safe space.
it is.
This is a place, we're playing a game for enjoyment. Even
Yeah,
at higher levels, it is still just a
mhm,
game that is made for us to enjoy.
yeah.
And if you do not feel comfortable, it is okay to call a judge.
You should expect sportsmanship.
Absolutely.
That is an expectation.
Yep.
So that's sort of the big one, right? Like
Yeah.
that's the one that everybody thinks about when calling a judge. Like they're
Yep.
cheating, call a judge. What else? Like what are
Uh,
some of the nitpickier ones?
if
Not
you
nitpickier,
have
but
if
like
you have questions about game states or cards, so say for example, you are playing a game and your opponent has access to a card that maybe you haven't seen. You can call a judge and say, "Hey, what is the oracle text on this card?" And if you can give them an adequate description of what the card is, you don't even have to know what its name is. You kind of just
yep.
have to know what it does, how much it costs, what kind of card it is, that stuff. If you can give them an adequate description of the card, then they can give you an oracle text of what that card is.
They could most judges, and I don't know if it's all of them, but I know most judges in the area. You give them the lightest description of a card, and they will have it pulled up on their
Yeah.
phone real fast. This happens a lot with Phyrexian cards, unfortunately.
Yeah, it happens with any foreign cards, so
Foreign
like
printing,
stuff
yeah.
like that. Your opponent plays a card that's not in English.
Mhm.
Same situation. Or if, like I said, if you have a question about the game state, so like timing, you know what I mean?
Oh
like
yeah.
like or the way that something resolves.
Mhm.
Say if you have a piece of instant speed interaction in your hand that interacts with the graveyard, and you're curious whether or not you can break up your opponent's graveyard combo by casting the spell at instant speed, you can say, "Hey judge, does this card do this?" Again, you can step away from the table with the judge, explain the situation, and they can tell it you. A judge, however, cannot give you game advice.
No, never.
So
Don't ask them. They won't tell you. And oftentimes if you try to ask a judge for game advice, they will give you some sort of warning.
yeah, you'd be in trouble. Game rules violations is another one.
GRVs. This is sort of the classic, like you accidentally, and you and I have both done this, like you accidentally draw an extra card, or like there's a lot of cards who have oracle texting that's different than what it says, or you drop a card on the floor, or like it's so many times that we make mistakes. You attack with a creature with summoning sickness, or
Yep.
And then we advance
Cards
to a board state.
cards should be exiled from graveyard, and they were not.
Oh yeah, like Eldritch Evolution, or you're casting a card off of the wrong colored mana land, right?
Oh yes, I thought
and
my
we-
scrubland was a savannah. Sorry.
Oh my god. Sorry, Tom. I really feel he won that game. To be clear, that I'm so happy he won that game.
Another one is deck registration issues.
Yeah, it happens a decent amount, right?
Yep. So you shuffle up, you draw your 7, and you're like, this card is in my sideboard.
Yeah, you forget to sideboard,
Whoops.
or you just miss a card,
or you are you suddenly discover that you have 2 copies of Ancestral Recall in your Canadian Highlander deck.
Yeah, that's a big one. Don't have multiple copies of cards you can't have multiple copies of,
or have a 14+ point spread,
or come to the championship with a 99 card deck.
Oh, shots fired. Is it true that was actually supposed to be an unexpectedly absent?
I don't know. I think that was just the joke.
I don't know. It was kind of convincing.
Very funny though.
It's funny.
Yeah. But yeah, if there's any kind of deck registration errors, call a judge. They'll know how to handle it.
And the last one on the list is price splits.
Yeah, this is a big one. And I've read some articles on this because judges warn people about this. If you try to do a split without a judge and you come to an agreement and then you tell the judge, that can be considered coercion.
Yes.
Especially if there is a monetary prize as well as like an invite prize or like a card prize.
So you are intentionally stacking the scales one way or the other so that your opponent is enticed to give you what you want.
Correct. That is big bad. Don't do that. And we saw it at the team trios where one of the players was like, "Hey, are we splitting top 8 for prizes?" And immediately got a hold of Bob, was like, "Hey, we're looking at splitting top 8 for prizes. Are you cool with this? Do we need to have a meeting?" And there was like a little meeting meeting that happened
Mhm.
before going into the top 8. It was great.
Yep. Everybody has to be on the same page.
Yeah, and everybody has to agree to the terms of the split without any kind of coercion. Call the judge right away.
Sticky, messy business.
Mm-hmm.
Judge.
Judge? Yes.
I love you. Thank you.
Ley line of the lucky.
Oh,
You said
my
that you had
goodness.
you had a question for me that you were going to spring on me
So where do you draw the line?
on calling a judge. If there's ever any kind of confusion, and that goes from me or my opponent, or if I just want to make things clear about what I'm doing, I will immediately call a judge.
So part of the reason I am okay with what, I'm okay with this is like I'm cognizant of what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
I am allowing my opponent to do a thing that was significantly better for them. I am cognizant of what's happening. If I was ever like a little bit sus about what was happening, like, I don't really know what's going on here, judge.
Yeah, well, that's the thing is, technically, and this is sort of the technicality, they're not allowed to do that. That is against the rules of the game. And this is sort of this is a bigger topic of conversation, and this sort of goes back to there's what is declaring combat? What is moving from main phase to combat? Yeah. And there have been a lot of rules changes about what this is and what it means. I
think like Magic Online rules, right? Mm-hmm. It's just Magic Online rules.
Right. Which is that once you go to combat,
you cannot go back. The game does not allow you to do that.
Yeah. And so that's why I would be like, I'm more apt to call a judge, because then the judge call isn't my opponent isn't my opponent is trying to cheat. It is this allowed? And generally speaking, they're going to say, no, that's not allowed. We've already moved past that.
So I'm the cheater.
It's not even cheating. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing, but it's definitely if you called a judge and asked if that was allowed, I don't believe they would be kosher with it.
Interesting.
And getting a judge involved sort of makes the judge the bad guy rather than me. So I just have to go, hey, judge, is this allowed? My opponent would like to do this. Is this something that's allowed?
Right. There's always a way to be diplomatic about it. That's another thing is like some people just come off as jerks when they call a judge no matter what. Like it doesn't matter how innocent the situation is. Yeah. They'll be like, well, get off my lawn. I'm calling the cops.
Yeah. Don't do that. Always try to be as diplomatic as possible, and be courteous to the judges too. If you don't like their call, that's tough.
They are doing a job.
There are ways to appeal it kindly and respectfully. You can say, "Can I talk to a higher level judge?" Right. And generally, there's going to be a floor judge and there's going to be a head judge. You can appeal to a head judge.
Be a jerk.
Remember, if you're going to call a judge, just say "judge" loud. Raise your hand. Keep it raised until a judge comes to your table. That's all you got to do.
Okay, that's all. Thanks for watching or listening to the Magic Dads. I just want to remind you that we're proud of you.
We're proud of you.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.